Hello, hello, hello! Greetings, salutations! Konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear, wonderful, marvelous scholars, to the study. Hello there, hello there, hello there. Hello there, Union 20. Congratulations on getting first. Hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome. Hello there, Firefly. Welcome. Welcome, 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 all you wonderful, marvelous scholars, wherever you are, whenever you are across this vast, wonderful multiverse. I hope you're all doing well, my dear scholars. How are you all doing? Excuse me there. Julian 20, Spiffy. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, I hope the rest of you are doing well as well. Well as well. You know, language is a funny thing, isn't it? You can say things and they make perfect sense, yet they sound so strange. Or maybe it's just the language I speak. I don't know. Excuse me. Oh, but yes. Anyway, Horace and I have had a all right day. I mean, it's been relatively quiet, relatively slow. Nothing really to speak of except for, of course, the allergies are starting to pick up around the multiverse, which means, of course, the cosmic allergies are affecting me. So if you hear me cough or sneeze or whatever, yeah, that's the cause. Julian 20, lovely day for a walk in the woods. Oh, that sounds wonderful. A horse and I should go and visit some of the rooms here that are set in the woods. There's one room, the lake forest, which is amazing. It is an entire forest. It's beautiful. We go there once in a while. It's filled with nature books, of course. What the neat thing about the lake forest is that the books are actually built into every tree. So all you have to do is remove the book from the tree and it's there. Sometimes it's in the branches, sometimes it's in place of the leaves, and sometimes it's just hidden in the bark itself. Julian 20, ooh, yes, 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 yes. But yes, 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 yes. I digress. I love doing that noise. Digress. Yes, yes. Tonight we're actually starting a new novel, my dear scholars. Yay! We haven't read it since we finished Around the World in 80 Days, which was a bit of a long one. Tonight's novel is going to be interesting. We will be reading, and if I had arms that were working, it would matter me showing you the cover. We are going to be. I mean, look over here. You'll see it right here, in the back here. Can't reach, but you'll see it. We are reading The Prisoner of Zenda. Now, The Prisoner of Zenda is an interesting little example and of how pop culture works. When The Prisoner of Zenda first came out, what was it? It was in what year was it? When was it? 1894. When The Prisoner of Zenda first came out in 1894, it was a smash hit. And it was such a smash hit that it actually created a whole subgenre of adventure books, which were called Ruritarian romances. And for a while there, these books were just being written left and right. Um, it was popular enough that it had many, many movie adaptations. In, and yet, as a book, it has it has somewhat faded from the popular mindset. It's not talked about much anymore, which is a shame because apparently it sounds quite good. Although we'll see that for ourselves. Julian 20 and a Doctor Who episode too. Yes, yes, there was a Doctor Who episode which was directly inspired by Prisoner of Zenda. Um, and there was a movie. There were a couple. There were many movie versions made. Some in the silent era, some in the sound era. It was some that were comedies and spoofs of it. But again, it just kind of no one talks about it nowadays anymore. The book itself also, I believe, resulted in one sequel. Um, but yes, so tonight we will be reading this very famous book, and we'll see if it's as good as it was back then, or if instead it has aged horribly and that there is a good reason that it's faded from the public consciousness. So, my dear scholars, are you ready to venture forth into this Ruritarian romance? Excuse me. This is also a book that's been on my list to read for a while now. I've been holding off reading it because there were other books that were ahead in line, essentially. But I finally decided it was time to read it. All right then. Yulian Toy says, "Yes, please, Private Mag. Let's get to it." Okay. So, my dear scholars, sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage, dim the lights if you wish, and let us begin our reading of The Prisoner of Zenda by Anthony Hope. Chapter 1. The Razendals with a word on the Elfbergs. "I wonder when in the world you're going to do anything, Rudolph," said my brother's wife. "My dear Rose," I answered, laying down my egg spoon, "why in the world should I do anything? My position is a comfortable one. I have an income nearly sufficient for my wants. No one's income is ever quite sufficient, you know. I enjoy an enviable social position. I am brother to Lord Burlesdon, and brother-in-law to that charming lady, his countess. Behold, it is enough." "You are 9 and 20," she observed, "and you've done nothing but knock about. It is true. Our family doesn't need to do things." This remark of mine rather annoyed Rose, for everybody knows, and therefore there can be no harm in referring to the fact, that pretty and accomplished as she herself is, her family is hardly of the same standing as the Razendals. Oh, lovely. Judgmental already. Besides her attractions, she possessed a large fortune, and my brother Robert was wise enough not to mind about her ancestry. Ancestry is, in fact, a matter concerning which the next observation of Rose's has some truth. "Good families are generally worse than any others," she said. Upon this I stroked my hair. I knew quite well what she meant. "I'm so glad Robert's is black." You know, out of context, that might come off as strange. I'm sure they'll explain it. I hope. She cried. At this moment, Robert, who rises at 7 and works before breakfast, came in. He glanced at his wife. Her cheek was slightly flushed. He patted it caressingly. "Private Merrick, let's hope so." "Oh, yes, let's hope so." "What's the matter, my dear?" he asked. "She objects to my doing nothing, and having red hair. said I in an injured tone. Oh, of course he can't help his hair. It generally crops out once in a generation, said my brother. So does the nose. Rudolph has got them both. I wish they didn't crop out, said Rose, still flushed. I rather like them myself, said I, and rising, I bowed to the portrait of Countess Amelia. My brother's wife uttered an exclamation of impatience. I wish you'd take that picture away, Robert, said she. My my dear, he cried. Good heavens, I added. Then it might be forgotten, she continued. Hardly, with Rudolph about, said Robert, shaking his head. Why should it be forgotten? I asked. Rudolph! exclaimed my brother's wife, blushing very prettily. I laughed and went on with my egg. At least I had shelved the question of what, if anything, I ought to do. And by way of closing the discussion, and also I must admit of exasperating my strict little sister-in-law a trifle more, I observed, I rather like being in Elfberg myself. When I read a story, I skip the explanations. Yet the moment I begin to write one, I find that I must have an explanation. That is true about writing. For it is manifest that I must explain why my sister-in-law was vexed with my nose and hair, and why I ventured to call myself an Elfberg. Need to drink more water. I have so many water bottles piling around me. I'm going to be surrounded soon. For eminent as I must protest, the Razendals have been for many generations, yet participation in their blood, of course, does not, at first sight, justify the boast of a connection with the grander stock of the Elfbergs, or a claim to be one of that royal house. Oh, thank you for the resubscription, Julian20. Oh, thank you. Much appreciated. Where was I? Oh, yes. Or a claim to be one of that royal house. Julian20, you are welcome. Ah, thank you so much. It makes me happy. For what relationship is there between Ruritania and Berzeldown? Between the palace at Straslau or the castle of Zenda and number 305 Park Lane W? Well, then, and I must premise that I am going, perforce, to rake up the very scandal which my dear Lady Berzeldown wishes forgotten. In the year 1733, George II, sitting then on the throne, peace reigning for the moment, and the King and the Prince of Wales being not yet at loggerheads, there came on a visit to the English court a certain prince, who was afterwards known to history as Rudolph III of Ruritania. The prince was a tall, handsome young fellow, marked, maybe marred, it is not for me to say, by a somewhat unusually long, sharp, and straight nose, and a mass of dark red hair. In fact, the nose and the hair which have stamped the Augsburgs time out of mind. He stayed some months in England, where he was most courteously received. Yet in the end he left rather under a cloud. For he fought a duel. It was considered highly well bred of him to waive all question of his rank, with a nobleman well known in the society of the day. Tried to fight. Never mind. Society of the day, not only for his own merits, but as the husband of a very beautiful wife. In that duel, Prince Rudolph received a severe wound, and recovering therefrom, was adroitly smuggled off by the Ruritanian ambassador, who had found him a pretty handful. The nobleman was not wounded in the duel, but the morning being raw and damp on the occasion of the meeting, he contracted a severe chill, and failing to throw it off, he died some 6 months after the departure of Prince Rudolph, without having, without having found leisure to adjust his relations with his wife, who, after another 2 months, bore an heir to the title and estates of the family of Burlington. Wait a second. This lady was the Countess Amelia, whose picture my sister-in-law wished to remove from the drawing room in Park Lane, and her husband was James, 5th Earl of Burlington, and 22nd Baron Raseldal, both in the peerage of England, and a Knight of the Garter. As for Rudolph, he went back to Ruritania, married a wife, and ascended the throne, whereon his prodigy in the direct line have sat from then till this very hour, with one short interval. And finally, if you walk through the picture galleries at Burleston, among the 50 portraits or so of the last century and a half, you will find 5 or 6, including that of the 6th Earl, distinguished by long, sharp, straight noses, and a quantity of dark red hair. These 5 or 6 have also blue eyes, whereas among the Rasendals, dark eyes are the commoner. So basically, my dear scholars, we can guess what happened. Really not unusual among the nobility, I have to say, but still, we can guess what's going on here. Excuse me. This is the explanation, and I am glad to have finished it. The blemishes on honorable lineage are a delicate subject, and certainly this hereditary we hear so much about is the finest scandalmonger in the world. It laughs at discretion, and writes strange entries between the lines of the peerages. It will be observed that my sister-in-law, with a want of logic that must have been peculiar to herself, since we are no longer allowed to lay it to the charge of her sex. It was of the time, yeah. Treated my complexion almost as an offense for which I was responsible, hastening to assume from that external sign inward quality of which I protest my entire innocence. And this unjust interference she sought to buttress by pointing to the uselessness of the life I had led. Well, be that as it may, I had picked up a good deal of pleasure and a good deal of knowledge. I had been to a German school and a German university, and spoke German as readily and perfectly as English. I was thoroughly at home in French. I had a smattering of Italian, and enough Spanish to swear by. I was, I believe, a strong, though hardly fine swordsman, and a good shot. I could ride anything that had a back to sit on, and my head was as cool as one as you could find, for all its flaming cover. If you say that I ought to have spent my time in useful labor, I am out of court, and have nothing to say, save that my parents had no business to leave me £2,000 a year, and a roving disposition. The difference between you and Robert, said my sister-in-law, who often, blessed her, speaks on a platform, and oftener still as if she were on one, is that he recognizes the duties of his position, and you see the opportunities of yours. To a man of spirit, my dear Rose, I answered, opportunities are duties. Nonsense, said she, tossing her head, and after a moment she went on. Now here's Sir Jacob Borrodaile offering you exactly what you might be equal to. 1,000 thanks, I murmured. He's to have an embassy in 6 months, and Robert says he is sure that he'll take you as an attaché. Do take it, Rudolph. To please me. Now, when my sister-in-law puts the matter in that way, wrinkling her pretty brows, twisting her little hands, and growing wistful in the eyes, all on account of an idle scamp like myself, for whom she has no natural responsibility, I am visited with compunction. Moreover, I thought it possible that I could pass the time in the position suggested with some tolerable amusement. Therefore I said, "My dear sister, if in 6 months' time no unforeseen obstacle has arisen, and Sir Jacob invites me, hang me if I don't go with Sir Jacob." "Oh, Rudolph, how good of you! I am glad." "Where's he going to?" "He doesn't know yet, but it's sure to be a good embassy." "Madam," said I, "for your sake I'll go, if it's no more than a beggarly legation. When I do a thing, I don't do it by halves." Excuse me. My promise then was given. But 6 months are 6 months, and seem an eternity. Blah blah. Hey Matsu, did you know that this book inspired many future adventure genre books, but has since largely been forgotten? Oh, I didn't know that, blah blah. Thank you for educating me. Horace also says hello. Where was I? My prom. Also, welcome, blah blah. Welcome. Good to have you here. Blah blah. I read that somewhere, I think. No clue where. I wonder where you might have read it. Oh well. My promise then was given. But 6 months are 6 months, and seem an eternity. And inasmuch as they stretched between me and my prospective industry, I suppose attaché are industrious. But I know not, for I never became attaché to Sir Jacob or anybody else. I cast about for some desirable mode of spending them, and it occurred to me suddenly that I would visit Ruritania. It may seem strange that I had never visited that country yet, but my father, in spite of a sneaking fondness for the Elfbergs, which led him to give me, his second son, the famous Elfberg name of Rudolph, had always been averse from my going, and since his death my brother, prompted by Rose, had accepted the family tradition which taught that a wide berth was to be given to that country. But the moment Ruritania had come into my head, I was eaten up with a curiosity to see it. Need another drink? After all, red hair and long noses are not confined to the House of Elfberg, and the old stories seemed a preposterously insufficient reason for debarring myself from acquaintance with a highly interesting and important kingdom, one which had played no small part in European history, and might do the like again under the sway of a young and vigorous ruler, such as the new king was rumored to be. My determination was clinched by reading in the Times that Rudolph V was to be crowned at Strelsau in the course of the next 3 weeks, and that great magnificence was to mark the occasion. At once I made up my mind to be present and begin my preparations. But, inasmuch as it has never been my practice to furnish my relatives with an itinerary of my journeys, and in this case I anticipated opposition to my wishes, I gave out that I was going for a ramble in the Tyrol, an old haunt of mine, and propitiated Rose's wrath by declaring that I intended to study the political and social problems of the interesting community which dwells in that neighborhood. Perhaps, I hinted darkly, there may be an outcome of the expedition. What do you mean? She asked. Well, said I carelessly, there seems to be a there seems a gap that might be filled by an exhaustive work on. Oh! Will you write a book? She cried, clapping her hands. That would be splendid, wouldn't it, Robert? It's the best of introductions to political life nowadays, observed my brother, who has, by the way, introduced himself in this manner several times over. Bursleden on Ancient Theories and Modern Facts and The Ultimate Outcome by a Political Student are both works of recognized eminence. I believe you are right, Bob, my boy, said I. Now promise you'll do it, said Rose earnestly. No, I won't promise, but if I find enough material, I will. That's fair enough, said Robert. Oh, material doesn't matter, she said, pouting. But this time she could get no more than a qualified promise out of me. To tell the truth, I would have wagered a handsome sum that the story of my expedition that summer would stain no paper and spoil not a single pen. And that shows. 1 second, my dear scholars. Sorry about that tickle in my throat. And that shows how little we know what the future holds. Excuse me again. For here I am, fulfilling my qualified promise, and writing, as I never thought to write, a book, though it will hardly serve as an introduction to political life, and has not a jot to do with Tyrol. Neither would it, I fear, please Lady Burlesdon, if I were to submit it to her critical eye, a step which I have no intention of taking. Oh, allergies, my dear scholars, are not wonderful things. We'll get another drink of water. Okay, and we will continue. So far, the story's very slow moving, but this is, of course, just the introduction. I'm guessing we're going to get into more in the next few chapters. Chapter 2, Concerning the Color of Men's Hair. It was a maxim of my Uncle William's that no man should pass through Paris without spending 24 hours there. My uncle spoke out of a ripe experience of the world, and I honored his advice by putting up for a day and a night at the Continental on my way to the Tyrol. I called on George Featherly at the embassy, and we had a bit of dinner together at Durand's, and afterwards dropped into the opera. And after that we had a little supper, and after that we called on Bertrand Bertram. How do you say this name? Bertram Bertrand, a versifier of some repute, and Paris correspondent to the Critic. He had a very comfortable suite of rooms, and we found some pleasant fellows smoking and talking. It struck me, however, that Bertram himself was absent, and in low spirits. And when everybody except ourselves had gone, I rallied him on his moping preoccupation. He fenced with me for a while, but at last flinging himself on a sofa, he exclaimed, I'm trying to decide, is this Bertram English or is he French? Hmm. What do you think, my dear scholars? Shall I do an English voice for Bertram or a French voice? What do you think? Because it says he's a Paris correspondent, but he could be English just living in France. Well, what do you think, my dear scholars? English or French for Bertram? Yulian20 says French. Hmm. Okay, we can try with French, I suppose. Very well, have it your own way. I am in love, infernally in love. Oh, you'll write the better poetry, said I by way of consolation. He ruffled his hair with his hand and smoked furiously. George Featherly, standing with his back to the mantelpiece, smiled unkindly. If it's the old affair, said he, you may as well throw it up, Bert. She's leaving Paris tomorrow. I know that, snapped Bertram. Not that it would make any difference if she stayed, persuaded the relentless George. She flies higher than the paper trade, my boy. Hang her, said Bertram. It would make... Gotta get back to the voice. It would make it more interesting for me, I ventured to observe, if I knew who you were talking about. Antoinette Mauban, said George. De Mauban, growled Bertram. Oh, said I, passing by the question of the de. You don't mean to say Bert? Can't you let me alone? Where's she going? I asked, for the lady was something of a celebrity. George jingled his money, smiled cruelly at poor Bertram, and answered pleasantly, Nobody knows. By the way, Bert, I met a great man at her house the other night. At least about a month ago. Did you ever meet him? The Duke of Streslau? Yes, I did, growled Bertram. An extremely accomplished man, I thought him. Oh, hello there, Desuo. Welcome. We are reading The Prisoner of Zenda. We are on the second chapter. It was not hard to see that George's references to the Duke were intended to aggravate poor Bertram's sufferings. So I drew the inference that the Duke had distinguished Madame de Mauban by his attentions. She was a widow, rich, handsome, and according to repute, ambitious. It was quite possible that she, as George put it, was flying as high as a personage who was everything he could be, short of enjoying strictly royal rank. For the Duke was the son of the late King of Ruritania by a second and morganic marriage, and half-brother to the new king. He had been his father's favorite, and he had had occasion some unfavorable comment when he had been created a duke, with a title derived from no less a city than the capital itself. His mother had been of good, but not exalted birth. He's not in Paris now, is he? I asked. Oh no, he's gone back to be present at the king's coronation, a ceremony which I should say he'll not enjoy much. But Bert, old man, don't despair. He won't marry the fair Antoinette, at least not unless another plan comes to nothing. Still, perhaps she... He paused and added with a laugh, Royal tensions are hard to resist. You know that, don't you, Rudolph? Confound you, said I, and rising, I left the hapless Bertram in George's hands, and went home to bed. The next day George Featherly went with me to the station, where I took a ticket for Dresden. Going to see the pictures? Asked George with a grin. George is an invariant gossip, and had I told him that I was off to Ruritania, the news would have been in London in 3 days, and in Park Lane in a week. I was, therefore, about to return an evasive answer, when he saved my conscience by leaving me suddenly and darting across the platform. Following him with my eyes, I saw him lift his hat and accost a graceful, fashionably dressed woman who had just appeared from the booking office. She was perhaps a year or two over 30, tall, dark, and of rather full figure. As George talked, I saw her glance at me, and my vanity was hurt by the thought that, muffled in a fur coat and a neck wrapper, for it was a chilly April day, and wearing a soft traveling hat pulled down to my ears, I must be looking very far from my best. A moment later, George rejoined me. "You've got a charming traveling companion," he said. "That's poor Bertrand's goddess, Antoinette de Maubern. And like you, she's going to Dresden. Also, no doubt, to see the pictures. It's very queer, though, that she doesn't at present desire the honor of your acquaintance." "I didn't ask to be introduced," I observed, a little annoyed. "Well, I offered to bring you to her, but she said, 'Another time.' Never mind, old fellow. Perhaps there'll be a smash, and you'll have a chance of rescuing her and cutting out the Duke of Stresslaw." No smash, however, happened, either to me or to Madame de Maubeuin. I can speak for her as confidently as for myself, for when, after a night's rest in Dresden, I continued my journey, she got into the same train. Understanding that she wished to be left alone, I avoided her carefully. But I saw that she went the same way as I did to the very end of my journey, and I took opportunities of having a good look at her, when I could do so unobserved. As soon as we reached the Ruritanian frontier, where the old officer who presided over the custom house favored me with such a stare that I felt surer than before of my Elfberg physiognomy, excuse me, I bought the papers and found in them news which affected my movements. For some reason, which was not clearly explained, and seemed to be something of a mystery, the date of the coronation had been suddenly advanced, and the ceremony was to take place on the next day but one. The whole country seemed in a stir about it, and it was evident that Streslau was thronged. Rooms were all let, and hotels overflowing. There would be very little chance of my obtaining a lodging, and I should certainly have to pay an exorbitant fee charge for it. I made up my mind to stop at Zenda, a small town 50 miles short of the capital, and about 10 from the frontier. My train reached there in the evening. I would spend the next day, Tuesday, in a wander over the hills, which was said to be very fine, and in taking a glance at the famous castle. "Oh, hello there! Spoilers, I have arrived. Hello there, Father Grigori. Grigori, am I getting that right? I hope I'm getting that right. Sometimes I mess up on names. Welcome! We are reading The Prisoner of Zenda. We are on the second chapter of the night. I am Matsu Quinox, interdimensional omniversal librarian. This is Horace, and welcome to the study. Father Grigori, collect my half-life too. Huh. No idea what that means, but okay. Where was I? Um. Okay. And go over by. Father Grigori, can I eat Horace or however you spell? That would be a terrible idea. Horace is not someone to be trifled with. I would not suggest trying to eat him or trying to hurt him in any possible way. He is he he is more than he seems. Trust me. And go over by train in Strasau on the Wednesday morning, returning at night to sleep in Zenda. Accordingly, at Zenda I got out, and as the train passed where I stood on the platform, I saw my friend Madame de Maubon in her place. Clearly she was going through to Strasau, having with more providence than I could boast, secure apartments there. I smiled to think how surprised George Featherly would have been to know that she and I had been fellow travelers for so long. Oh, thank you for the follow! Thank you! Thank you! I always enjoy having new scholars join us. I was kindly received at the hotel. It was really no more than an inn, kept by a fat old lady and her two daughters. They were good, quiet people, and seemed very interested in the great doings at Strasau. The old lady's hero was the Duke, for he was now, under the late king's will, master of the Zenda estates, and of the castle, which rose grandly on its steep hill at the end of the valley, a mile or so from the inn. The old lady, indeed, did not hesitate to express regret that the Duke was not on the throne, instead of his brother. "We know Duke Michael," said she. He has always lived among us. Every Ruritania knows Duke Michael, but the king is almost a stranger. He has been so much abroad, not 1 in 10 knows him even by sight." "And now," chimed in one of the young women, "they say he has shaved off his beard, so that no one at all knows him." "Shaved his beard?" exclaimed her mother. Who says so?" "Johann, the Duke's keeper. He has seen the king." "Ah, yes, the king, sir, is now at the Duke's hunting lodge in the forest here. From here he goes to Strasau to be crowned on Wednesday morning." Father Gregor, Irish or German, pick one, man. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get a good accent for it. They don't exactly explain what Ruritania's accent is like. I'm assuming it's kind of a German. It's been a while since I've attempted an accent on stream. I just read a book where I had to do a French and an English accent at the same time, so bear with me on accents. I was interested to hear this, and made up my mind to walk next day in the direction of the lodge, on the chance of coming across the king. The old lady ran on gregoriously. Let me pause a minute and get this. "Ah, and I wish he would stay at his hunting, that and wine, and one thing more, are all he loves, they say, and Safra Duke to be crowned on Wednesday." That's quite a spoiler. That is quite a spoiler. Crowned on Wednesday? That I and Safra Duke to be crowned on Wednesday? That I wish, and I don't care who knows it. "Hush, mother!" urged the daughters. "Oh, there's many to think as I do," cried the old woman stubbornly. I threw myself back in my deep armchair and laughed at her zeal. "For my part," said the younger and prettier of the two daughters, a fair, buxom, smiling wench, "I hate Black Michael. A red Elfberg for me, mother. The king, they say, is as red as a fox, or as—" And she laughed mischievously as she cast a glance at me and tossed her head at her sister's reproving face. "Many a man has cursed the red hair before now," muttered the old lady. "And I remember James, 5th Earl of Burston. But never a woman? cried Never a woman? cried the girl. I? And a woman? Then it was too late, was the stern answer, reducing the girl to silence and blushes. How come the king's here? I asked to break an embarrassed silence. It is the Duke's land here, you say? The Duke invited him, sir, to rest here till Wednesday. The Duke is at Stressau preparing the king's reception. Then they're friends. None better, said the old lady. But my rosy damsel tossed her head again. She was not to be repressed for long, and she broke out again. Aye, they love one another as men do when as men trying to get this voice right. As men do who want the same place and the same wife. The old woman glowered, but Father Gory, if I do worst book ever, will you read the worst fanfic in history called My Immortal? I actually have a book in mind, unfortunately, and to be honest, I'm kind of iffy on reading fanfics at times here. I would have to think on it. But with worst book ever, I do have a book prepared that is considered one of the worst books ever written. Gregory, it's literally a 4chan made of fanfic. I am aware of My Immortal. I am absolutely aware of My Immortal. Where was I? The old woman glowered, but the last words pricked my curiosity, and I interposed before she could begin scolding. What? The same wife too? How's that, young lady? Arthur knows that Black Michael, well then, mother the Duke, would give his soul to marry his cousin, the Princess Flavia, and that she is to be the queen. Upon my word, said I begin to be sorry for your Duke. But if a man will be a younger son, why he must take what the elder leaves, and be as thankful to God as he can. And thinking to myself, I shrugged my shoulders and laughed. And then I thought also of Antoinette de Maubern and her journey to Strauss. It's little dealing Black Michael has with, began the girl, braving her mother's anger. But as she spoke, a heavy step sounded on the floor, and a gruff voice asked in a threatening tone. Trying to see who this is. Sorry, I have no idea who this character is. Oh, yeah. I see. Okay, yeah. Who talks of Black Michael in his highness's own burg? The girl gave a little shriek, half of fright, half, I think, of amusement. You'll not tell of me, Johann? She said. See where your chatter leads, said the old lady. The man who had spoken came forward. We have company, Johann, said my hostess, and the fellow plucked off his cap. A moment later he saw me, and to my amazement he startled back a step, as though he had seen something wonderful. What ails you, Johann? asked the elder girl. This gentleman on his travels come to see the coronation? The man had recovered himself, but he was staring at me with an intense, searching, almost fierce glance. Good evening to you, said I. Good evening, sir, he muttered, until still scrutinizing me, and the merry girl began to laugh as she called, See, Johann, it is the color you love. He started to see your hair, sir. It's not the color we see most of here in Zenda. I crave your pardon, sir, stammered the fellow with puzzled eyes. I expected to see no one. Give him a who is this? Oh, there. I know who it is. It's me, apparently. Give him a glass to drink my health in, and I'll bid you good night, and thanks to you, ladies, for your courtesy and pleasant conversation. So speaking, I rose to my feet, and with a slight bow turned to the door. The young girl ran to light me on the way, and the man fell back to let me pass, his eyes still fixed on me. The moment I was by, he started a step forward, asking, Pray, sir, do you know our king? I never saw him, said I. I hope to do so on Wednesday. He said no more, but I felt his eyes following me till the door closed behind me. My saucy conductor, looking over her shoulder at me as she preceded me upstairs, said, There's no pleasing. No, there's no pleasing Master Johann for one of your colour, sir. He prefers yours, maybe, I suggested. I meant, sir, in a man. In a man. There I have to go. There I go. In a man, she answered with a, how do I pronounce this word? Cocolestus glance. What? Asked I, taking hold of the other side of the candlestick. Does color matter in a man? Nay, but I love yours. It's the Elfberg red. Color in a man, said I, is a matter of no more moment than that. And I gave her something of no value. God send the kitchen door to be shut, said she. Amen, said I, and left. In fact, however, as I now know, color is sometimes of considerable moment to a man. Oh, and there's a little map here. Hold on, my dear scholars. Maybe I can... Give me a second. Maybe I can find this map. Oh, oh yeah. Found it. Let me open this. Let me save this. So we can have this. Might be useful for us. If I can get this to work. Let's see if we can get this to work, my dear scholars. Image. Source. Source browse. Da da da. Can we add this castle image? Oh dear, it looks like we can't. That's odd. Won't save. Oh well, I guess we'll have to do without the image on the castle. I don't know why it's not saving it. Oh, hold on. Okay, actually I think I got it. Okay, so give me 1 second. See if we can get this. Oh, is that? Yep. There we are. And there's a map of the castle there. First time I've done this sort of thing. Okay. Chapter 3. A merry evening with a distant relative. I was not so unreasonable as to be prejudiced against the Duke's keeper because he disliked my complexion, and if I had been, his most civil and obliging conduct, as it seemed to me to be, next morning would have disarmed me. Father Gakori, as a child, I yearned for the mind's child. Jeez. Hearing that I was bound for Straslau, he came to see me while I was breakfasting, and told me that a sister of his, who had married a well-to-do tradesman and lived in the capital, had invited him to occupy a room in their house. A room in her house. I am not going to say that on stream, Father Gregori. I'm not going to say those sort of words. This is a clean stream. We don't say things like that. Where was I? He had gladly accepted, and now found that his duties would not permit of his absence. He begged, therefore, that if such humble, though, as he added, clean and comfortable lodgings would satisfy me, I would take his place. He pledged his sister's acquaintances, and urged the inconvenience and crowding to which I should be subject in my journeys to and from Slesau the next day. I accepted his offer without a moment's hesitation, and he went off to telegraph to his sister, while I packed up and prepared to take the next train. But I still hankered after the forest and the hunting lodge, and when my little maid told me that I could, by walking 10 miles or so through the forest, hit the railway at a roadside station, I decided to send my luggage direct to the address which Johann had given. Take my walk, and follow to Stressau myself. Johann had gone off, and was not aware of the change in my plans. But as its only effect was to delay my arrival to his sister's for a few hours, there was no reason for troubling to inform him of it. Doubtless the good lady would waste no anxiety on my account. There I am. Okay. I took an early luncheon, and having bidden my kind entertainers farewell, promising to return to them on my way home, I set out to climb the hill that led to the castle, and thence to the forest of Zenda. There's the map of the castle, my dear scholars. Oh, there we are. Okay. Half an hour's leisurely walking brought me to the castle. It had been a fortress in old days, and the ancient keep was still in good preservation, and very imposing. Behind it stood another portion of the original castle, and behind that again, and separated from it by a deep and broad moat, which you can see here, which ran all around the old buildings, was a handsome modern chateau, erected by the last king, and now forming the country residence of the Duke of Straslau. The old and new portions were connected by a drawbridge, which you could see on the map. And this indirect mode of access formed the only passage between the old building and the outer world. But leading to the modern chateau there was a broad and handsome avenue. It was an ideal residence, where Black Michael desired company. When Black Michael desired company, he could dwell in his chateau. If a fit of excuse me, having a bit of tongue tied here. God, I'm trying to talk this. Misanthropy. I know the pronunciation of it. Why can't I get it right? Misanthropy seized him. He had merely to cross the bridge and draw it up after him. It ran on rollers, and nothing short of a regiment and a train of artillery could fetch him out. I went on my way, glad that poor Black Michael, though he could not have the throne or the princess, had at least as fine a residence as any prince in Europe. Excuse me. Soon I entered the forest. I walked on for an hour or more in its cool, somber shade. The great trees enlaced with one another over my head, and the sunshine stole through in patches as bright as diamonds, and hardly bigger. I was enchanted with the place, and finding a felled tree trunk, propped my back against it, and stretching my legs out, gave myself up to undisturbed contemplation of the solemn beauty of the woods, and to the comfort of a good cigar. And when the cigar was finished, and I had, I suppose, inhaled as much beauty as I could, I went off into the most delightful sleep, regardless of my train to Sasau and of the fast waning afternoon. To remember a train in such a spot would have been rank sacrilege. Instead of that, I fell to dreaming that I was married to the Princess Flavia, and dwelt in the castle of Zenda, and beguiled whole days with my love in the glades of the forest, which made a very pleasant dream. In fact, I was just impressing a fervent kiss on the charming lips of the princess, when I heard, and the voice seemed at first a part of the dream, someone exclaim in rough, strident tones. Give me a second, my dear scholars. I have to take a quick break for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that, my dear scholars. Sorry. Hmm. Why, the why the devil is in it. Save him, and he'd be the king. The idea seemed whimsical enough for a dream. By the sacrifice of my heavy mustache and carefully pointed imperial, I was to be transformed into a monarch. I was about to kiss the princess again when I arrived very reluctantly at the conclusion that I was awake. I opened my eyes and found two men regarding me with much curiosity. Both wore shooting costumes and carried guns. One was rather short and very stoutly built, with a big bullet shaped head, a bristly gray mustache, and small pale blue eyes, a trifle bloodshot. The other was a slender young fellow of middle height, dark in complexion, and bearing himself with grace and distinction. I set the one down as an old soldier, the other for a gentleman accustomed to move in good society, but not unused to military life either. Turned out afterwards that my guess was a good one. The elder man approached me, beckoning the younger to follow. He did so, courteously raising his hat. I rose slowly to my feet. "He's the height too," I heard the elder murmur as he surveyed my 6 feet 2 inches of stature. Then, with a cavalier touch of the cap, he addressed me. "May I ask your name?" May I ask your... I'm trying to get this voice. It's hard to do German accents. "May I ask your name?" "As you have taken the first step in the acquaintance, gentlemen," said I with a smile. "Suppose you give me a lead in the matter of names." One second, again, my dear scholar. Again, dreadful tickle. "This," said he, "is Colonel Schapp, and I am called Fritz von Tallenheim. We are both in the service of the King of Ruritania." I bowed, and baring my head, answered, "I am Rudolph Rassendyll. I am a traveller of England, and once for a year or two I held a commission from Her Majesty the Queen." "Then we are all brethren of the sword," answered Tarlenheim, holding out his hand, which I took readily. "Rassendyll, Rassendyll," muttered Colonel Sepp. Then a gleam of intelligence flitted across his face. "By heaven!" he cried, "you're of the Bursendons? Burlesdons?" "My brother is now Lord Burlesdon," said I. "Thy head betrayeth thee," he chuckled, pointing to my uncovered poll. "Why, Fritz, you know the story." The young man glanced apologetically at me. He felt a delicacy which my sister-in-law would have admired. To put him at ease, I remarked with a smile, "Ah, the story is known here as well as among us, it seems." "None," cried Sap. "If you stay here, then do some man in all Ruritania will bear doubt of it, or a woman either." I began to feel uncomfortable. Had I realized what a very plainly written pedigree I carried about with me, I should have thought long before I visited Ruritania. However, I was in for it now. You know, my dear scholars, should I drop the accent? Or should I keep the accent in, my dear scholars? I could try something different with their accents, because I'm not quite getting the German accent, am I? "Oh, hello there, Kintron, welcome." Nope, keep the accent. Okay, okay. The German, Irish, Scottish accent. Well, it is a different country after all, so who knows? At this moment, a ringing voice sounded from the wood behind us. Fritz, Fritz, where are you, man? Tarlenheim started and said hastily, It's the king. Old Sap chuckled again. Then a young man jumped out from behind the trunk of a tree and stood beside us. As I looked at him, I uttered an astonished cry, and he, seeing me, drew back in sudden wonder. Saving the hair on my face and a manner of conscious dignity which his position gave him, saving also that he lacked perhaps half an inch, nay less than that, but still something of my height. The king of Ruritania might have been Rudolph Rasseldiel, and I Rudolph the king. For an instant we stood motionless, looking at one another. Then I bared my head again and bowed respectfully. The king found his voice and asked in bewilderment, Colonel, Fritz, who is this gentleman? I was about to answer when Colonel Sapp stepped between the king and me and began to talk to his majesty in a low growl. The king towered over Sapp, and as he listened, his eyes now and again sought mine. I looked at him long and carefully. The likeness was certainly astonishing, though I saw the points of difference also. The king's face was slightly more fleshy than mine, the oval of its contour the least trifle more pronounced, and as I fancied, his mouth lacking something of the firmness or obstinacy which was to be gathered from my shutting lips. But for all that, and above all minor distinctions, the likeness rose striking, salient, wonderful. Sapp ceased speaking, and the king still frowned. Then gradually the corner of his mouth began to twitch. His nose came down, as mine does when I laugh. His eyes twinkled, and behold! He burst into the merriest fit of irrepressible laughter which reigned through the woods and proclaimed him a jovial soul. Well met, cousin, he cried, stepping up to me, clapping me on the back and laughing still. You must forgive me if I was taken aback. A man doesn't expect to see double at this time of day, eh, Fritz? I must pray pardon, sire, for my presumption, said I. I trust it will not forfeit your majesty's favour. By heaven, you'll always enjoy the king's countenance, he laughed, whether I like it or not. And, sir, I shall very gladly add to it what services I can. Where are you travelling to? To Strelsau, sire, to the coronation. The king looked at his friends. He still smiled, though his expression hinted some uneasiness. But the humorous side of the matter caught him again. Fritz, Fritz, he cried, 1,000 crowns for a sight of brother Michael's face when he sees a pair of us. And the merry laugh rang out again. Seriously, observed Fritz von Tarlenheim, I question Mr. Rasendar's wisdom in visiting Strassau just now. The king lit a cigarette. Well, stop, said he questioningly. You mustn't go, growled the old fellow. Come, Colonel, you mean I should be in Mr. Rasendar's debt if... Oh, aye! Wrap it up in the right way, said Sapp, hauling a great pipe out of his pocket. Enough, sire, said I. I'll leave Britannia today. No, by thunder, you shan't, and that's sans phrase, as Sapp likes it, for you shall dine with me tonight, happen what will afterwards. Come, man, you don't meet a new relation every day. We dine sparingly tonight, said Fritz von Tarheim. Not we, with our new cousin for a guest, cried the king, and as Fritz shrugged his shoulders, he added, Oh, I'll remember our early start, Fritz. So will I, tomorrow morning. King seems a little bit, how shall I put it? Um, he doesn't seem very responsible. Let's put it that way. Excuse me. There seems to be something going on. Oh, wise old sap, cried the king. Come, Mr. Razendale. By the way, what name did they give you? Your Majesty's, I answered, bowing. Well, that shows they weren't ashamed of us. He laughed. Come then, cousin Rudolph. I've got no house of my own here, but my dear brother Michael lends us a place of his, and will make shift to entertain you there. And he put his arm through mine, and signing to the others to accompany us, walked me off westerly through the forest. Get another drink. Okay. Hmm? We walked for more than half an hour, and the king smoked cigarettes and chattered incessantly. He was full of interest in my family, laughed heartily when I told him of the portraits with Elfberg hair on our galleries, and yet more heartily when he heard that my expedition to Ruritania was a secret one. You, you have to visit your disreputable cousin on the sly, have you? Said he. Suddenly emerging from the wood, we came on a small and rude hunting lodge. It was a one-story building, a sort of bungalow, built entirely of wood. As we approached it, a little man in a plain livery came out to meet us. The only other person I saw about the place was a fat elderly woman, whom I afterwards discovered to be the mother of Johann, the Duke's keeper. Well, is dinner ready, Joseph? Asked the king. The little servant informed us that it was, and we soon sat down to a plentiful meal. The fare was plain enough. The king ate heartily, Fritz von Tarlenheim delicately, old Sap voraciously. I played a good knife and fork, as my custom is. The king noticed my performance with approval. "We are good trenchermen, we Elgebergs," said he. "But what? We're eating dry. Wine, Joseph, wine, man. Are we beasts, to eat without drinking? Are we cattle, Joseph?" At this reproof, Joseph hastened to load the table with bottles. "Remember tomorrow," said Fritz. "Aye, tomorrow," said old Sap. The king drained a bumper to his cousin Rudolph, as he was gracious or merry enough to call me, and I drank its fellow to the Elfberg Red, whereat he laughed loudly. Now, be the meat what it might, the wine we drank was beyond all price or praise, and we did it justice. Fritz ventured once to stay the king's hand. "What?" cried the king. "Remember you start before I do, Master Fritz. You must be more sparing by 2 hours than I." Fritz saw that I did not understand. "The colonel and I," he explained, "leave here at 6. We ride down to Zenda and return with the guard of honor to fetch the king at 8, and then we all ride together to the station." "Hang that same guard!" growled Sap. Oh, it's very civil of my brother to ask the honor of for his regiment, said the king. Come, cousin, you need not start early. Another bottle, man. I had another bottle, or rather a part of one, for the larger half traveled quickly down his Majesty's throat. Fritz gave up his attempts at persuasion. From persuading he fell to being persuaded, and soon we were all of us as full of wine as we had any right to be. The king began talking of what he would do in the future, old sap of what we had done in the past, what he had done in the past, Fritz of some beautiful girl or other, and I of the wonderful merits of the Elfberg dynasty. We all talked at once, and followed to the letter Sap's exhortation to let the morrow take care of itself. At last the king set down his glass, and leant back in his chair. I have drunk enough, said he. Far be it from me to contradict the king, said I. Indeed, his remark was most absolutely true, so far as it went. While I yet spoke, Joseph came and set before the king a marvelous old wicker-covered flagon. It had lain so long in some darkened cellar that it seemed to blink in the candlelight. Where was I? His Highness the Duke of Strasau bade me set this wine before the king, when the king was weary of all other wines, and prayed the king to drink, for the love that he bears his brother. Well done, Black Michael, said the king. Out with the cork, Joseph. Hand him. Did he think I'd flinch from his bottle? The bottle was opened, and Joseph filled the king's glass. The king tasted it. Then, with a solemnity born of the hour and his own condition, he looked round on us. 1 second. Gentlemen, my friends, Rudolph, my cousin, 'tis a scandalous story, Rudolph, on my honor. Everything is yours to the half of Ruritania. But ask me not for a single drop of this divine bottle, which I will drink to the health of that sly knave, my brother, Black Michael. And the king seized the bottle and turned it over his mouth, and drained it, and flung it from him, and laid his head on his arms on the table. And we drank pleasant dreams to his majesty, and that is all I remember of the evening. Perhaps it's enough. And I think we'll stop there because I can tell my voice is starting to give out a little bit. So far, though, it seems a pleasant enough story. Let me just shut this off. We haven't really encountered any problems, though. Although, I have a feeling next chapter is when things are going to get interesting. Julian20, thank you for the fine read. Oh, you're very welcome, Julian20. Very welcome. But yes, so I think next chapter things will get a little bit more interesting. This isn't a very long book, or at least the book itself that I have is not a very big one. There are 22 chapters, and we got through 3 of them tonight. So, Private Maverick, dicey even. Yes, dicey. Expect a little bit more to happen next time. So I'm thinking, dependent on how fast we read this. Yes, but it shouldn't take too long. Well, we'll see. We'll see. The pace of this story compared to Around the World in 80 Days seems a little bit slower and more deliberate. A slow build, as it were. But yes, so next week, if everything goes according to plan, next week we'll be playing more Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney on Tuesday, And on Thursday, we'll be continuing our reading of Prisoner of Zenda. So for now, let's see who it is we can raid tonight. So I want to make sure. Okay. Um, let's raid Jewelry Jelly. We haven't raided her in a while. She is playing a game, Hello Kitty Island Adventure. It might make a little relaxing from the reading and the tension of this. So then, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.